I just wanted to discuss this with you this morning, and it's this story regarding Blackout Nights. Do you know what Blackout Nights are?
They're racist nights, aren't they?
It's... I was going to get there. So, do you remember that there was the story about a week or two ago about the slave play in London? And the slave play was planning black-only nights, blackout nights. And that was in order to create a safe space for people who are black or people who don't have much money. I don't really understand the conflation between the two, but that was sort of happening. To have a time at the theatre where they were safe from the white gaze. I mean, that was literally the words.
I mean, when I go to the theatre, if there's a black person in the audience, I do just sit there gazing at them because...
And judging them.
I mean, honestly.
And now another West End theatre is going to hold these performances for predominantly black audiences.
What's the play?
The play is for black identifying guests, which is an odd phrase as well.
So we could go if we identified as black?
Well, I think so. Producers said it was not to deter white audience members from attending, but an explicit invitation to make people feel welcome and comfortable. The play is called Blue. It's at the Seven Dials Playhouse, and it's basically going to have the same thing. Black-only nights.
This sounds to me like a very small play that wasn't going to sell any tickets. Therefore,
you're so cynical.
Therefore, they've decided that this might get them a bit of press and they'll sell some more tickets.
Cynical. It's a play. It's Blue opened on March the 5th. It's described as a powerful examination of the recent crises that continue to plague policing, both in the USA and UK. And those who are attempting to book tickets for the theatre's website for March 18th and 27th are notified that the shows are for blackout performances. And the plot sees Detective Parker, who's been newly promoted to the Force Investigation Department, take on her first assignment, investigating a 29-year police veteran, Sully, and she has to decide whether to protect one of her own or pursue an investigation that could ruin her marriage and career. The show shines a light on one bad apple. So, I mean, it sounds like it might be quite an interesting play, and there might be moral dilemmas in there and things, but obviously these blackout performances have been highly controversial because some people are saying, well, hang on, this is precisely the segregation that we're supposed to be fighting against when it comes to things like this. And also, I've seen many people who are non-white saying, hang on, we don't need this. I've never once felt like I can't go to the theatre. Now, if you were to say that you're not going to have a blackout performance, but you're going to have a performance that perhaps really targets those people who are on lower incomes, anyone of any race or ethnicity, where the theatre is perhaps not accessible because of the cost, I would be standing there absolutely cheering, because I think that the prohibitive cost of some West End performances is terrible. But that's nothing to do with ethnicity. That's usually to do with class, socioeconomic status. That is not about ethnicity. But now I think in some of the defence of this as well, people are saying, actually, no, this isn't about ethnicity. This is about people not having access to the theatre because of incomes. Well, if that's the case, then why make it a blackout night?
All right, I think this is important. So tonight, the 9th, if you want to go and see Blue, you'll be pleased to know that of all of the tickets, they've only sold 12. And the tickets are not expensive. The cheapest is £15. The most expensive is £25. So there's almost any seat that you want, even directly next to the stage available. I would say they're struggling, and this was a good idea to try and up their ticket sales. I'm sorry to be a cynic, but, you know, I've just looked.
But then again, is that not an outrageous way of trying to do that? And of course,
but if you were trying to sell tickets, you'd do anything.
Are the blackout nights still happening on the other play as well? So. Are they still going ahead? Because I know they said that they were sort of contemplating them. Didn't they say that they were thinking about whether they were going to keep them?
Look, it's racism. There is no other description for this. When you suddenly decide to have a segregated audience, you are going back in time and have learnt nothing from history, perhaps because someone burnt the books or something, I don't know. But we're talking all of the time about wanting to have a completely inclusive society that is diverse and multicultural, and yet here we are saying on this occasion we're going to be the opposite to all of those things, and we're going to be racist against white people.
That's what I find so frustrating about some of these arguments, in as much as, look, I sometimes think that a lot of it comes from a grain of a point. You know, if there is no, like, it's like when, you know, it's like when someone makes the point, look, actually, you know, when we look at the figures, there aren't many people from different ethnicities that go to the countryside. Right?
Perhaps they don't want to go to the countryside.
I know, but let me, before you bite my head off, hang on. That's a fair point, I think. It might be a fair point. You look at it and go, OK, well, then the conversation is, OK, what can we do to make it more open and accessible to everyone because it's a nice thing?
Sell it to them.
Fine. Or, well, let's sell it to them, as in not physically actually sell them bits of the product.
Attributes. Yeah, talk about
exactly.
it.
What I find frustrating is we don't say, oh, look, what can we do to make it more accessible for everyone? What can we do to make it accessible for people of different classes, different ethnicities, you know, different sexual orientations? Let's make sure the countryside's for everyone. No, we're not seeing very many people of colour going to the countryside. The countryside is racist.
Yes.
You see what I mean? And those are two different things.
Of course.
And that's what I think is quite frustrating about that.
This is like, if you
Not
go...
only about people go to the theatre's racist. No. There might be really good reasons. Let's explore those reasons without jumping to the racism.
This is like when I was at school and no girls did science. I was the only girl...
Science is sexist.
Right. I was the only girl in my chemistry class. And, you know, we didn't suddenly say science is sexist. We said, look, hang on a minute, not enough girls are doing science. What can we do to make science more attractive to girls?
That's what you do. And it's sort of this zero, and it goes back to what we were talking about before, the lack of nuance, the lack of... It's 0 to 100. We can't just say, what can we do to encourage it? And also, I would argue in the case of theatre, that it is class and cost that is the barrier to the theatre, whatever your ethnicity might be. I wonder if anyone's ever done a study of how many working class white people go to the theatre. I bet that's incredibly low.
Exactly.
And so to me, I would say that is probably one of the biggest barriers. And I think, great, let's have the conversation, really important conversation to have, because it would encourage people from different classes and ethnicities to get into the theatre. But why do we have to then have these segregated nights? I think that if you want to do more, I would say, right, okay, if you really want to make a difference, put your money where your mouth is and have nights where it is only for people who are on some sort of universal credit. And say, right, for these nights, we're going to say that you have to be on universal credit and every single ticket is going to be a £5.
Or make sure that in every performance you have tickets at a £5 for people on universal credit. So that you don't, again, cause a divide.
No, you're saying, I don't care what you are, I don't care what ethnicity you are. What we're worried about is income and class, which is by far one of the biggest barriers to getting on in Britain, more than ethnicity, I would argue. So that would be the way to solve the problem. I think that this is misguided, and what's frustrating as well is it's precisely the behaviour that I thought we were fighting against.
Oh, we've gone backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like kids playing tennis, isn't it? In my East London school, we had tennis courts, but they were used as netball courts because people from the East End didn't play tennis. But then tennis is an expensive sport to play if you've got to go and join a club and you've got to have the equipment and you need someone to teach you, you know. So all sorts of things come into these decisions. It's not because we were white, because there were plenty of people in my East London school who weren't white, but they didn't play tennis either.